George, you mentioned and referenced there, like staff members and professionals as being part of a TC. And we know from my experience about staff members and residents being all community members. We're all part of that community. What do we mean by rational authority in that respect?
Well, that's a specific staff role, to be a rational authority. Rational authority is the main one. Usually that's the true staff person who is maybe formerly was a resident, graduated, came back, and is now helping to essentially direct community's method. The general requirement for all staff and all even senior residents, but for staff, if you want to teach staff how to be effective in a community's method model, what I say to them, you have to learn how to facilitate community's method. It's unfolding. The method is unfolding. You understand how community works. You understand the relationship between the community and individual. Are they giving feedback, and are they meeting the expectations and making decisions for itself? But you got to make sure that the community is doing that. So that's you facilitating it. So typical examples of residents will very quickly come to staff to try to solve a problem. And the first thing I try to teach staff, don't solve that problem so fast. They can come to you. Think facilitation. And one way you think facilitation as a staff person is you say, what do you think the solution? You got techniques for doing it. But the idea is you want basically facilitate, help them do the community. Rational authority. You notice the word rational is there. They're the top staff people in this. They have to deal with the real issues of individuals doing well in the community, if they're not doing well, the major management issues that have to be settled about the health and safety and effectiveness of the community. And so when decisions have to be made that have to do with either positive or negative effects on the client, maybe down to the dramatic examples of some clients have threatened violence and so on, and they're therefore subject to the possibility of being discharged, because that's one of the cardinal rules. You don't violate, you can't act any violence, and it may very well be to lead to discharge. Well, that decision is a staff decision. Authority means you're the final decision maker. That's what the word authority means. And the word rational is that you can provide the reasons for your decision to this individual and to the community. That is, why are you making that decision? And that, in providing the reasons should be consistent with what the purpose of the TC is, or the community's method is. And that is, if essentially we're trying to move people into safe space and live a safe life, we cannot do that. If your behavior threatens this community, then the community is at stake. That's a serious example of a rational authority. But there are less dramatic examples of being rational authority. What I try to teach staff is that any staff person who's going to offer a decision as an authority on this, in whatever matter, even if it's minor or major, always be ready to provide the, if you like, therapeutic educational reason for it.
Yeah, that rationale.
Yeah. What's the rationale? Yeah. But that rationale can't be punitive. It has to be, they got to see what's educative about what we're really addressing. It's not simply that I want to slap you down because you threatened me. I have to tell you, here's the reason. If this behavior goes on like this, we may not have a working community. You know what I mean? And that's it. They got to see the rationale for your decision. That you're rational. Not only you provide a rationale, but you provide rational decisions. Often also to check staff who don't provide rational decisions. They may provide decisions that comes off their own emotional reactions. You know what I mean? They may be frightened and irritated and frustrated themselves. It's understandable. They're human beings. You know what I mean? If they got a lot of difficulties going on in the community, they may start making snap decisions this way, that way, and so on. That's not good for the community. You know, none of that's good. So you got to be basically, the staff have to be ready to say, I'm always in the role of facilitating community, and that means when I got to make some decisions, positive and negative decisions in terms of what happens to people, they got to really hear the real reasons why I'm making it. And so the rest of the community is reinforced in terms of safety, that at least the staff person is rational and they're making good decisions based on community's method and TC thinking, philosophy, and perspective.
And that
Does that help?
And most definitely. And that continuous feedback to the community. So if staff are making decisions, it's a shared understanding and it's a shared decision with the community, which is different again from other treatment approaches.
Well, is that you mean in terms of shared numbers of staff people or staff and resident people making decisions?
Yeah, I mean, when rational authority decisions are made,
right,
when we're making rational decisions about someone's treatment, it's important then to provide the community with a rationale and feedback around that educational process, really. So the community really understands why that decision's been made.
The term rational authority emerged from the experience with the single authority, the old hierarchical TCs, where the pyramid moves to the top, and at the very top there's a director, right? And that's the final authority. Then assistant directors, and they're the sub-final authorities, down to even very senior residents who have only informal authority because the staff allocates it to them. So it comes down to, so the issue was to understand the potentiality of decision-making and authority, essentially getting in trouble, having problematic difficulties with their own authority roles, particularly in substance abuse treatment. There are a lot of authority problems that were associated problems to substance abusers, criminal substance abusers. So you don't ignore that picture. People who might be doing very well in TCs, you can put them in authority positions and they can have problems with it. But it turns out to be a great element of community's method for all people who are in any authority position, even if you had no individual problems around it, to recognize how to be the most effective authority, be a rational authority. That is, you can give them a real decision, but you got to be able to explain why that decision is delivered, and not only that, what they really can learn from it.